It's Valley Radio. Once again, it is time for Fanboy Friday. So with me on the phone, checking in from Dallas, Texas, professional Q&A moderator and speaker, film critic at BigFanboy.com, and the show director at Dallas Comic Show, the one and only Mr. Mark Walters.
Robert, I believe you would be referring to this as the dramatic return of Fanboy Friday, wouldn't you? Yeah, it's like this is a big comeback.
It's like Return of the Jedi, or, you know, it's like it's a big deal, man.
That's right. Even COVID-19 couldn't keep us down.
No, man, you used the Force and you used it well. I'm telling you what, man. So, you know, we used to do this at the old FM station. Then, I started my new station here locally. And then, we're trying to ramp it back up. And then right as we were trying to get it back going, COVID happened and movies pretty much just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. So I feel like, now's a good time. Things are starting to kind of reopen, starting to ramp up a little bit. There's some alternative options, I guess, as far as movie viewing and whatnot. And I guess it's just cool to talk to you, man. And hopefully we'll get caught up a little bit.
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, after doing, I was thinking about it, and I've been a film critic now for, I want to say maybe like 27, 28 years. And after all of those years of going to see movies in the theater and then all of a sudden having month after month of not going to a movie theater, it's really strange for me to kind of make that adjustment. And, watching movies at home using streaming and whatnot, I mean, there certainly are advantages to that. You don't have to put up with some of the sometimes minor annoyances you get when you go to a movie theater. But to me, there's just nothing quite like being inside a movie theater, the lights go down, you're surrounded by people, and you can sort of feed off of the energy of the people in the audience. And I got to tell you, man, I really miss that. I really miss that experience.
Oh, for sure, man. Me too. And you're absolutely right. I mean, there's something about, the anticipation. I mean, everything from the tearing of the ticket to the smell of the popcorn, to, like you said, the lights going down. I mean, the previews, the trivia, the classic little logos and characters they put up on there. I mean, the whole thing is an experience. And then even to a certain extent, the annoyances, the people talking, the babies crying, all the little things that go in to make it a very unique experience. So yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I miss going to the movies. So man, you're the best thing I got now.
Well, I tell you, the last movie I saw before all of this kind of went into shutdown mode, it was a press screening for Onward, the Disney movie Onward.
Yeah.
Or I guess it's Pixar. I specifically remember because all of this was just starting to kind of kick into gear. People were just starting to, worry about, protecting yourself and not going out and stuff like that. And I will never forget sitting in that theater, watching that movie, and taking note of how many people around me were coughing and sneezing, and not just like minor coughs, like phlegmy coughs. And it was enough to make me think, like, yeah, I really need to think twice about whether or not I go back to a movie theater. So I kind of was in that mindset early. Like I started to already think, like, yeah, I'm going to have to stop doing this for a while. And it was a little bit of a wake-up call. And I think that, sometimes people don't think about that stuff because if you haven't done it for a while, you don't really, it's not present in your mind. But that sort of made me a little more comfortable about watching movies at home and whatnot. And hey, we have had a lot of really great options for at-home viewing. I mean, there's been a lot of, first-run movies that we're getting to see from the comfort of our own home.
Well, now, you mentioned Onward. I'm going to say that was the last movie that I saw in real life as well, too. I absolutely loved it. I loved just about everything about it. I felt like it was kind of one of those movies that's made for guys like us, which they don't do so much anymore. But, and of course, the voice cast was phenomenal. Why don't you go and give me your 2 cents on that? Because I just can't say it. I mean, I'm biased. I loved it.
Oh, yeah. I actually adored it. I loved it so much that when it went to Disney streaming, I actually went and watched it again and I showed it to my mom, and my mom really liked it as well. Now, the funny thing is, in my personal life, I do have a brother, but we don't really get along. But, the movie is very much kind of about brotherly love and the importance of family and things like that. And I think that even if you have a sibling, I think you can still appreciate it. I just enjoyed the idea of these two guys going on an adventure together and having it be kind of like a real-life version of a fantasy adventure. And I thought it was a really smart and very imaginative blending of fantasy and kind of the, I guess there really is no other way to refer to it other than just sort of fantasy elements blended with like a modern day sensibility, like, what if elves and orcs and all of those things, existed within the real world and kind of modernized the same way that we did. And I just thought that was such a brilliant concept and really made for great comedy. And there's some really great, like, laugh out loud moments in that movie that even the second time around, it really kind of got to me. And so, yeah, I thought it was great. I adored that film. And it didn't do very well, and I think a lot of that is the result of, because COVID-19 kicked in when it did, because it was literally that weekend. Because I think that weekend and then maybe the weekend following, you had two big movies open. You had Onward and you had Bloodshot. And they both happened around the time when COVID started to kick in. And so both of those movies suffered at the box office because of the fact that, people weren't going to the movie theater anymore.
I absolutely adored it. And I'll finish off by saying what I really liked about it was kind of the bait and switch about it. They kind of sell it like it's a father-son movie and ends up being a brother movie, like you said. And I just thought that was just fantastically played out. Awesome. And of course, like we talked about before, Chris Pratt, totally a guilty pleasure for me. He could do the same dang role every movie. I'd be all right with it.
Yeah, and what's interesting is I felt like you don't often say this when you see animated films, but just the voice chemistry between Chris Pratt and Tom Holland, I really bought into the idea that these two guys were brothers and that they had spent, all these years together. I mean, it really felt like you were listening to two siblings, and I think there's something to be said for that, because a lot of times, voice actors, they're not even in the same room together.
Right. Yeah.
And whereas in this movie, I know that they purposely tried to, do a lot of their recordings together. And I think that it comes through in the movie. Like when you're watching it, it really does feel like you're listening to two brothers, and that's great.
Well, if you happen to missed it because of COVID-19, be sure and get that one, back around on whether it's on Blu-ray or DVD or streaming or whatever. Okay, now a couple of other things that came out, kind of that theater at home. I know Trolls was a big one, and then recently Scoob came out. Are there any ones that you've seen that you want to give us the quick run on, the theater at home type titles?
So those two I have not seen yet. Scoob is kind of high on my list because I did grow up very much a Hanna-Barbera kid, and I enjoyed a lot of those cartoons. And I'm very excited about the idea that Scoob not only kind of reinvents Scooby-Doo for a new generation, but it also kind of incorporates some of the classic Hanna-Barbera characters like Dino Mud, and so you're gonna get more than just Scooby-Doo. You're gonna get. They're basically introducing the Hanna-Barbera universe for a new generation. So I think this is just the beginning, and I'm very excited about that. So I'm looking forward to seeing Scoob. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. The most recent things that I've watched, there's a new comedy called Lovebirds with Kumail Nanjiani and Issa Rae, which is really funny. I did see Bloodshot a couple months ago when it came out. It was okay. Not great. Which is a shame because that's the first movie that's made based on the Valiant comic universe, and it was meant to be kind of a launching pad for Valiant comics to be adapted into big budget movies. And because the movie didn't do very well, I have a feeling that probably is it's not going to happen now. But you never know. Golly, let's see, what else have I seen lately? There's certain movies I revisited. Like I said, I revisited Onward. I revisited Invisible Man. I saw the movie The Hunt. I've kind of been plowing through everything that's available as far as streaming goes because, let's face it, you can't go to a movie theater and watch new movies now. But it's very possible that's going to change in about a month or so because starting in July, at the very beginning of July, there's supposed to be some new films hitting movie theaters. Unhinged, starring Russell Crowe. And then, of course, Christopher Nolan's Tenet is meant to be kind of like that's the big film that I think everyone's counting on to kind of, re-usher people into the movie theater setting. So we'll see. I mean, I really hope by then that we're able to do that, that we're able to get back out there. So we'll see what happens. But everything's kind of in a holding pattern right now. Movie theaters are trying to figure out what's going on. I know some of these theater chains are really suffering, too. Like, I think it was announced today or just a day or so ago that Regal Cinemas is probably not going to reopen. and AMC is fighting off bankruptcy. I mean, this is hitting people really hard.
Oh, yeah.
Behind the scenes, So even if theaters are able to reopen in July, there may already be some pretty irreparable damage done.
Well, man, I know we've been all streaming a lot. I know I've been like Netflix's best friend and vice versa. Give me a couple of titles, man, that you just kind of, the last couple of months that you went through, whether it's a series on Netflix or whatever streaming services. I mean, there's got to be a show that you just kind of got around to, for lack of, I guess simply because there was nothing else to watch. Anything like that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I, like everybody else in the world, fell in love with Tiger King, and I plowed through that about as quickly as I could. And of course, that is Netflix, and supposedly we are going to get some kind of sequel to that at some point. It's already being talked about what the sequel would be, but there's been talk that maybe the next Tiger King would focus on Siegfried and Roy, which I think could be really interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? But yeah, Netflix has been the movie I mentioned before, Lovebird. That's a Netflix film. There's another film that is playing on Netflix that kind of like about a month or so ago was being talked about very heavily on social media, and it's a very interesting film. And I believe it's a Spanish film, or from like Argentina or something, but it's called The Platform. And this is a really interesting kind of high concept film. It takes place somewhat in the future, and it has to deal with people that are inside this giant prison where there's like hundreds of levels, each level above the other, and there's this floating platform that lowers down from level to level, and it's sort of a commentary on classism and how, like, the people that are on the top levels, like when the platform lowers down, it's got all this food on it, like this, really nice, delectable food. But each platform it goes down, because the people are feeding off of it, the selections get worse and worse and worse and worse. And then, of course, as it gets down to the bottom, there's hardly anything left, if there is anything left.
Right.
And randomly, these people will be rotated to different levels. So you might be on the top level, 1 week, and then the next week you're like on one of the bottom levels, and it's about how people deal with that. And it's a really interesting movie. It's called The Platform, and it is available with either the original version, which you'd have to read the subtitles on, or there is a dubbed version that you can watch that is in English. But that's a film that, like, everybody I've talked to that has seen it, they always want to discuss it because they find it really, really, fascinating, and it has a very sort of ambiguous ending that you could very much leave open to interpretation in terms of whatever the viewer takes it to mean, and I thought that was fascinating. Another film that's really, really cool is, I got to remember the name of it. I think it's Extraction with Chris Hemsworth, and this is a movie that comes from the mind of the Russo brothers, the same guys that did the Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, and this is a film that I think this easily would have been a theatrical release, but because of everything that's going on, it ended up going straight to Netflix, and really exciting kind of action movie, and I think it did well enough to where now they're already talking about doing a sequel to it. That's another film I would recommend that people check out. And the only thing I haven't seen that's currently kind of in my queue is, let's see, there's a new Jerry Seinfeld special, comedy special that just premiered. I think it's called 23 Hours to Kill or something like that. I think that's about it for me, though.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you've seen? Have you watched anything that's really kind of blown you away?
Man, no, you know what? I was just so stoked that they put Community on Netflix. That's just one of my favorite shows of all time. So we bammed through that thing, 6-7 seasons, whatever it was. So Community took a lot of my quarantine time up. We've been catching up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and The Flash, basic, comic and sci-fi fare. But I actually managed to get out of spring 2020 without watching Tiger King, and I don't think I'll ever go back. So,
Robert, you are missing out.
Everybody says that, but I have a feeling that when I'm done, I'm going to feel really dirty. So I'm just going to leave. I'm going to let it lie, But
here's the thing about Tiger King. I can encapsulate this for you very, very easily. So my mom loves watching the Friday night, 2020 Dateline stuff where they show, some person got murdered and they dissect the entire case and everything.
Right.
Tiger King is basically the backwoods hick version of that.
Yeah.
only kind of like the R-rated version. So, like, it's really kind of seedy and nasty, and there's a lot of cussing and everything. But if you like those types of shows, like if you like those Friday night, investigation drama documentary type shows, Tiger King is like that turned up to an 11. I mean, it really is just sort of, once you get into it, once you watch one or two episodes, you absolutely will be hooked. And I fully understand, because I was one of those people that came into it a little bit late. Like, everybody was already talking about it. And then when I started watching it, I immediately understood the fascination with it, because it is everything that you've heard it is, and then some, because it's just so unbelievable. And yet the fact that it's all real makes it that much better. So, and I'm telling you, I know for a fact that Hollywood right now is scrambling to get a movie made out of this thing. There has to be, like, every studio in Hollywood's probably trying to get a jump on this thing.
Well, right on. Like I said, I might give it a shot. Who knows? I know there's not much to talk about, as far as new releases go. I know you've got to go here in a minute, but a quick question. Over the last couple of months, any remarkable Blu-ray DVD releases that you grabbed?
The only thing that's been out lately, I mean, obviously, we didn't necessarily talk about Star Wars that much, but Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker hit Blu-ray. There are some cool things coming out here, like Top Gun just released a 4K Blu-ray that is absolutely gorgeous. They did a really good job, and that's loaded with a lot of really great bonus content. If you haven't picked up that Star Wars Rise of Skywalker Blu-ray, the number one selling point on that is it comes with a second disc that has a documentary about the making of Rise of Skywalker. And regardless of how you felt about the film, that documentary is excellent, and it shows kind of all the the good and the bad of the process of making the film. It shows, like, the difficulties that they faced, and it really gives you a new appreciation for the film itself, because you realize just how much work went into a lot of the scenes that they were making in that movie. So I would definitely recommend that for anyone that's a Star Wars fan. Even if you didn't like the film, I still think you should watch that film. I believe it's called The Skywalker Legacy is the name of the documentary.
Well, those bonus features are always really great on those packages. So.
Absolutely. And then one of my favorite films, one of my favorite action movies just hit 4K Blu-ray for the first time, and that is The Mask of Zorro. That just came out recently, which I was really happy about that. And let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that really kind of stands out in my mind other than Top Gun. And I think Top Gun is obviously topical because we've got a new Top Gun movie coming out here pretty soon. But everything for me right now, it's all about counting down the days until Tenet comes out, because I'm really excited to see what that is. And again, one of the things I love about these Chris Nolan movies, I'm going into this movie, I've seen probably 3 trailers from it. I still have no idea what this movie's about.
Oh, wow.
And I just think that's great. I love going into a film that, like a big blockbuster movie like that, and not knowing what to expect.
Well, we'll look forward to that. And before we wrap it up, Mark, anything on BigFanboy.com you want to tease us about that's out there?
It's been kind of a slow,
sure.
Sort of a slow news time, because there's just not a lot of films coming out. And so for that reason, we haven't really been posting a whole lot of articles, but we're trying to keep people abreast of what's going on. We do have some DVD contests and things that are happening right now, and we've got more on the way. And we're celebrating our 15th anniversary, so we're still the longest-running movie news website in Dallas. And I just want to, thank everybody for checking us out, and thank you for making us a part of what you do. And, it really means a lot to have support of people like yourself. And, I hope to keep doing this for another 15 years.
Well, right on, man. Well, congratulations. 15 years at BigFanboy.com. Y'all go check that out. And I guess that's going to wrap it up, man. So once again, let's give it up to professional Q&A moderator and speaker, film critic at BigFanboy.com, show director at Dallas Comic Show, the much-anticipated, grandiose, amazing, superb return of Mark Walters. Was that better?
that was a Stan Lee level entertainment. Thank you so much, Robert.
Right on, Mark. We'll talk to you next week, man. Thanks again.
All right. Take care, bud.